Now that we rendered out the rays themselves, another thing we will want to render is the influence of those light emitting rays onto the surface of Iron Man itself. Not just the lighting, but also the reflection, considering that the surface of Iron Man is metal and it's pretty reflective. That's an important component for us to have in order to have a successful and nice, good looking composition of the whole VFX shot. So the first thing we need to do is actually go to the materials and make sure we have a good material applied to Iron Man. So I'll create another principled shader, and this is going to be called principled shader Iron Man. This isn't going to be a fancy shader. All we need is for it to be able to capture light and for it to capture the reflection from the rays. And for that, we basically just needed the surface. We can have a completely white surface, so that way it's going to grab all the light. We don't want to use the point color. And the other thing we need to do is make sure that it's pretty reflective. So I'm going to increase the index of refraction to 4. And I'm going to make the roughness at 0.2. Everything else can remain as is. And this is going to be the principled shader. You can actually apply the material like this. It's fine. Going to the objects folder, there are a couple of lights here, the sunlight and the skylight that we use just for visualization purposes, mainly for the smoke. We can delete these. These aren't necessary anymore of this. So we'll use this geometry as lights. You have several ways of doing this. So let's say we select these two and hit geometry light. This is one way of doing it. So now we should have a geometry light that includes the first object that was selected. So let me hide this. As you can see, we now have the geometry visible. That's because the geometry light is visible. I'm going to call this geometry light thunder main or rays main. Let's keep it consistent, rays main. But instead of selecting this, let's dive inside. So remember, we created an output null, out ray head. Accept. Now, instead of using the complete name, if we switch this to an asterisk, we have a wildcard, and this should be able to grab everything. So, but we also need to kind of put that wildcard here. Okay, and as you can see, it's grabbing everything from that matches this description. Now, unfortunately, we're actually grabbing the secondary rays as well, so we need to make sure that the output of these have a different name structure. So instead of out ray sec, let's go instead here to the head and make sure we have kind of out ray main add. And that way, if we have on this one out ray main, we can use that as a name structure. Here we just add main. So only the operators, the nulls that actually have this out ray main something will be included. And we have those two. The other thing that we will want to do is make sure that here on the material, we can actually use the material that we were using before. The material on the surface of the geometry, the material that we created, Thunderbolt main and Thunderbolt head, and for the Thunderbolts. So this Thunder material has emission, and we can use this. If we connect that material, that's what's going to be used for lighting purposes. So here we can actually go to the object, and here we can choose that material. Let's go to matte, choose Thunder, and that's what's going to be lighting. So we have the light, we have a material on Iron Man, everything is pretty much set. The only thing we need to do now is go to the output, and I'm not, let's start with this one. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to say this is Mantra Rays main lighting. The difference on this one, I'm also going to change the name. So besides the name, which is kind of pretty obvious lighting. The main difference is going to be the way we set up the objects. So right now, what we want to do is we don't want to force this object. We only want to force Iron Man. So I'm going to cut this and put it here. This is the only object that we actually want to render out. The other thing is we also want to force that light. So here I'm going to go to Geolight Rays Main, accept pattern. So I'm going to force Mantra to render out this light. Finally, so in terms of object structure and name, that's all we need to do. And let's see how this looks. Let's go to the render view. Let's select the main lighting. We have the RAW camera set up. And let's just hit render and see how that looks. This render is a bit more complex. It's gonna take a bit longer to render because it's gonna be rendering a reflective surface that's gonna be grabbing the light and reflecting the light from the rays themselves. So we get something like this. You can click and you'll see, so this is gonna be the lighting and the reflection effect that the ray is gonna have on the surface, on the metallic surface of Iron Man. There are two things being added here: the light and the reflection. Okay, it would be nice for us, it's actually going to be important for us to be able to have access to both of them, each of them individually. Let me stop this. If you expand this little tab here, you'll see right now we're just looking at the color. But here on the Mantra, you have a section on the images where you set up the output file. You have extra image planes, also called AOVs. And on this one, we just want to, we don't need these, so we can kind of delete these. We just need diffuse and reflect. And let's say direct lighting per component. Now if we, let me just, I'm just gonna render a small region. So holding shift, we can drag here, and this should be faster. Now you'll see that on this drop-down list, we will have more options than before. We will have these options. Okay, so the render is exactly the same. Nothing changed there. But now the difference is that on this list, we will have access to the direct diffuse. So this is just the lighting and the diffuse rays. And then we will have the direct reflect. So this is just a reflection. This is probably the most important one. But it's nice for us to be able to, if we want to add a bit more light to the surface, then we can just use this. Okay, and we have the render. This means that when you render out this file, when Mantra renders out this file, it's going to include this result and these layers as well, these extra image planes.